Hi everyone, welcome to Humblehus. How are you? We're going to be making this beautiful sweater for the summer, spring, fall, just depends where you live. You can put it over a long sleeve bodysuit or a shirt, and your child is gonna look adorable, of course. So this is what we need. We need yarn, and I'm using this wool-like simile lane. You need a 3.5mm crochet hook, but I'm going to be using a 2.75. I know I'm going quite small on it. This is a super fine. The color is denim blue, and I got this yarn at Michael's. For the bow, I will let you know later on too, but you will need this from Peyton's Grace in a snow color. Okay, then scissors, stitch markers, and a yarn needle or a needle with a big eye, and lots of patience because the yarn is pretty thin, so it you know, it's a little bit tedious, but that's okay because you already know what the outcome is going to be. Let's start by doing a slip knot. So if you make a little loop and then pull this one through the middle, hold on to both ends and pull tightly, and then pull over here as well. Now we're going to chain 120, and the reason why we're starting with 120 is because the neckline eventually for that ending, that border that I'm doing, you have to have multiples of 12. Now, depending on what size you want to do for your child, but my baby is 8 months old today actually, and she wears a size 12 to 18 months. So you do the math for your child. You can see how it fits her on the photos, and obviously I wanted it to be loose, to have like this sort of loose look. So finish those 120 chains, and as you're going along, I like to add stitch markers like every 10 or every 20 or every 30 chains. You know, if I mess up, then I just go back and I don't have to start from the beginning. You have 120 stitches. Now we want to connect the two ends, but you have to make sure that your chain is straight. Grab the other end, and now insert your hook and do a slip stitch. Yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook. Chain one and do a single crochet into that same stitch. Add a stitch marker. Now if this widens a little bit, don't worry, just pull on the string. Alright, now into the next stitch, single crochet. Basically you're going to single crochet all the way around until you get back to the stitch marker. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I am going to put in my paper clip, which is red, so I can differentiate between the other ones, and then I won't keep crocheting past that line. Okay, so I have 3 single crochets, and like I said, you have to count 120 single crochets until you come back to this side. Alright, 120 single crochets. Now join this part with this beginning chain by doing a slip stitch, like so. Now chain 1 and single crochet into that same stitch. Add your stitch marker again. So that's your first single crochet. Into the next stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochets into that same one. Like that. Then the next stitch, it's only going to be 1 single crochet. The next stitch, it's going to be 2 single crochets into that same one. The next stitch is going to be 1 single crochet. The next stitch is going to be 2 single crochets, and then 1 single crochet. You get the idea, right? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All the way around, you reach this end, and you should have 180 stitches when you come to that end. Then you're going to make a slip stitch to join the two ends, and we're going to single crochet several rows. So this was basically our first increase. And after this increase, you're going to single crochet about 8 or 9 rows. After the first increase, I did 9 rows of single crochet until you reach about 1 3/4 of an inch. Okay, it's just, roughly. Now we're going to do the second increase. So you take out your stitch marker. So you insert your hook and you do a slip stitch. Now you chain 1 and you insert your hook into that same stitch. Do a single crochet and add your stitch marker. The way we're going to do increases now, so we did that first single crochet. Now we're going to do another single crochet, and then into the next stitch, so basically the third stitch, we're going to do 2 . Now again, into the next stitch, we do 1 single crochet, and the next stitch, another single crochet, and then the next stitch, 2 single crochets into that same stitch. 1 single crochet, and then the next stitch, 1 single crochet, and then the next stitch, 2 single crochets, and so on until you come all the way back around, and I will meet you here. You will have 240 stitches. If you don't, you did something wrong. And also the last stitch that you do has 2 single crochets into that 1 stitch. That's how you should finish. Now you're going to keep doing single crochets all the way around until this measures 3 inches. Okay, I will meet you after the 3 inches. After the second increase, I did 9 more rows. Now this is going to be our third increase. I'm going to do the usual slip stitch into that single crochet, and then chain 1 and do a single crochet into that same stitch. Add your stitch marker. So this was your first single crochet. Now we will do 2 more into the next 2 stitches. So now you have 3 single crochets, one after the other. And into this 4th stitch, that's where you're going to do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. Again, into that next one, you do 1 single crochet. And then into the next one, you do another single crochet. And into the next one, another single crochet. So 3 single crochets. And then into the one that's after, you do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. So it's going to be 3 and then 2 into that same stitch. 3 single crochets and then 2 into that same stitch, and so on. So 3, and then you do the increase. 3, you do the increase. 3, you do the increase. So you should have 300 stitches by the time you reach this marker. So I will see you back here. We do the slip knot into that first single crochet, chain 1, do a single crochet into that same stitch, and add your marker. From here on, you are just going to do rows of single crochets, and I don't know exactly the number yet, but what I do know is that we want to have 4 3/4 of an inch. I've done a total of 14 rows with just single crochets, and now this measures about 4.5 to 4 3/4 of an inch, which is perfect. And we're going to do another increase. So do a slip stitch into that first single crochet, chain 1, and do your single crochet, add your stitch marker. I'm sure you've noticed I have a bunch of stitch markers now because obviously it gets harder to keep count. So I kind of space them out every 10 or every 20 stitches. Okay, so that was your first single crochet. And we're going to do a total of 4 single crochets. 4 single crochets, and then the next one we'll do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. Now 4 single crochets again. And then I'll take out my stitch marker. And then 2 single crochets into that same stitch. That's how we're going to go around until you reach the end. So 4 single crochets, 2 into the same stitch, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2. At the end, you should have 360 single crochets when you're over here. You've done your increase, you have 360 stitches. Now we're going to do single crochets until you have about 5.5 inches. It's just an estimate. Just do single crochet rows. Don't forget to count. I have all my stitch markers if you need to use those. It makes it easier. I will see you when you're done. There you go. We are basically at 5.5 inches. So after the increase, I added 6 more rows. We are going to start with the sleeves. So do the usual, where you do the slip stitch into that first single crochet, chain 1, do a single crochet into that first one, add your stitch marker right there. Okay, now we are going to do 55 single crochets from here. Start counting until you have 55. Do those. I will meet you right over here. So here are my 55 single crochets. Grab a stitch marker like that. Now chain 7. You chain 7, and then from this stitch you count 70, so you skip 70, put in your stitch marker at 70, and then at stitch number 71, so 70 counting from here, of course, not from the beginning, so from here count 70, and then at stitch number 71 you just continue with a regular single crochet. Then single crochet 110 stitches, and that's where we'll put our next marker. So 110 stitches from here, counting from here. Single crochet all of those. When you get to 110, you add your stitch marker. I will meet you when you've done those 110 stitches. I've done 110 single crochets after we joined those 7 chains. So now I'm over here and I'm going to chain 7 again. And now we need to skip 70 stitches for the other arm. Okay, so go ahead and insert your hook and do a single crochet. So there's that other arm. 70 stitches that we skip. Add a stitch marker. Then keep doing single crochets. Exactly 55. You should have 55 single crochets left until you reach that back part, you know, where we're doing all the joining. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you when you're over here. You did those 55 stitches, and now you're back here. Do again a slip stitch, chain 1 and single crochet, add your marker. Now we're going to single crochet all the way to this point where you had the 7 chains. Now that you've come to this part where we chained where we did the 7 chains, you are just simply going to insert your hook into each chain and do a single crochet. So you have to do 7 single crochets. I know it's not very easy to see, but it's always that top loop. Alright, so 7, and then you go into that first stitch back on the body of the sweater. You're going to do this all the way to that other end. All the way around, you're going to do the same thing until you come back to where we do the slip stitch. We're going to go around several times now. So just around the body, you leave the sleeves. These are the sleeves, so you omit those. And we're gonna do several rounds. Okay, now we did rows from the sleeves. We did rows 45 to 59, all single crochets. And now the rest of the rows, in every single row, we're going to do a decrease at the beginning of that row. So you did the slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet 1. And the way you do the decrease on that next stitch, you insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then you insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. So that's your decrease. You're going to do that in every single row after your first single crochet. I will meet you when you're at that point. So here we are at we're going to start row 65. So row 65 to 71, it's all going to be single crochets. I will meet you after you're done with that. Okay, you've reached row 71. For the next 5 rows, we're going to do 1 decrease in each row once again. So if you remember, you did the slip stitch, chain 1, 1 single crochet, and then in the next one, you do the decrease. By the way, at the end of this row that you just finished, you should have 229 stitches. So row 71, 229 stitches, and then row 72, which is the one we're starting, you will have 228, and then row 73 you will have 227, and then row 74 you will have 226, row 75 you will have 225, and row 76 you will have 224 stitches. Okay, I will meet you at the end of row number 76. Don't forget, 1 decrease in each row. Now that you're going to start row 77, you're only going to do single crochets, so no increases or decreases, just 3 rows of single crochets, and when you're done with those, I will meet you back here. You made it to row 80, so this one that we're going to start is row number 80. Now we're going to change some things. You're going to do the slip stitch first. And now instead of chaining 1, you're going to chain 2. Now we're going to do a double crochet into this next stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. Insert your stitch marker into this first one so that you remember, and now again into the next one. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. See that? Again, yarn over. You're just going to keep doing double crochets all the way around. When you're done with those, I will meet you back here on the other end. Now that you finished row number 80, so you're here at the end with the double crochets, we're going to insert our hook into this first chain to do a slip stitch. So now chain 2, and now our first double crochet, we're going to go behind this post, this first post that you see. So you yarn over, you insert your hook, hope you can see it, through the front, and then you go through the back, yarn over, you pull up a loop, so you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the other 2 loops, and add your stitch marker. Now the next stitch, you yarn over, you go through the back, so behind your work, so you yarn over, behind your work, and then you insert your hook, go through the front, over that post, yarn over, pull up a loop, you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Again, so the next stitch is you're going to yarn over, go through the front, around the post, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now the next stitch is you yarn over, go behind your work, through the front of the post, over it, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. See how it's like back and forth, back and forth? Again, the next one is through the front, and then the next one, yarn over, behind your work. Do you see that? So we're gonna do that all the way until you get to the end, and I'll meet you back over here. Keep repeating the same pattern as you have, so the same of, slip stitch and then going back and forth between the posts, so through the front and the back. I wanted to show you, since I am almost done with my yarn and I'm gonna have to switch to a different one, to the second skein, I wanted to show you how I do it in case you are unsure of how to do it. So when you can't even hold the yarn in your hand anymore, you're going to take that new yarn, like so, and so you start the stitch as usual, you yarn over, you work into that post, and then instead of pulling the old one through, grab the new yarn, pull it through, and then finish off the stitch. When you're done, you can thread these into your work. So keep going with these double crochet rows back and forth until you have, as many rows as you like, honestly, but I'm gonna do about 10 or 11. Okay, here I'm done with this border at the bottom of the sweater, and I did, so after row number 80, which was that first row of double crochets, I still did 11 rows, and that's why I have all these little stitch markers. It just kind of helps me, it's just easier to keep count of them. Now, when you're done, you're going to do your last slip stitch, and we're going to close this off because we're done. I'll just cut it off, and I like to loop it, pass the yarn through that loop, and you'll just have to thread this into the sweater, okay? And obviously take out all your stitch markers. We're moving on to the sleeves, and then at the end we'll do the neckline. This is the sleeve, and if you remember, we had separated 70 stitches and added those 7 stitches to it, so that obviously makes 77 stitches that we have to go around. And if you're looking at the sweater, so the front of the sweater is looking towards you, we are going to start at this bottom part of the sleeve. That's where we're going to pull in the yarn, and so that we can go around. Now, between the first stitch and the last stitch, there's a little opening right there. We're going to pull the yarn through there, and we're going to chain 2 into that first stitch. So you have 7 stitches here. You're going to do your first double crochet. Yarn over, insert your hook, and do your double crochet. Add your stitch marker at the top of those 2 chains, and now go on to the next one. Do your next double crochet. Wait, I didn't notice that I went into the same stitch. Just undo that stitch. See, it's a bit hard to see. Okay, so now you've reached this corner. Take out your stitch marker. And I want you to see that there's like a gap. Okay, if we don't want to have that, let's go back. Really my way of doing it. You don't have to do it like this, but I think it just makes a thicker double crochet. So you yarn over onto your hook, you insert into that space, yarn over, pull up a loop. So this would be how you would start a double crochet, right? Now you're going to yarn over again and insert it into that next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You're going to have 5 loops on your hook, but you're only supposed to have 3, right, for that double crochet. So you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 3 loops so that you have 3 loops on your hook, and simply finish off like a regular double crochet where you yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. That way you don't have that gap, that space there. Right, and then you just keep going with the next stitch. Just do a regular double crochet. Simply go all the way around with double crochets until you're back where you started, and I will meet you over here. We are back on this other end. This will be my last stitch over here. And I just keep the stitch markers to remind me where I was at. Okay. From that first chain of 2, you are going to do a slip stitch into that chain, and now chain 2, not where you did the chain 2, but the post right next to it. That's where we're going to start that, you know, going through the back and then going through the front, so back and forth, just like we did on that other border. So I'll add my stitch marker here, and I went through this post, and now I'm gonna go through the back and so on. Again, through the front and through the back, so just like we did here at the bottom. And we're going to do that, so this round and then another round, and that's it for the sleeve. And the same thing on the other side. I'll meet you after the second sleeve. After that, we'll continue with the neckline. Remember, we started with 120 stitches, and now we need to do 121 single crochets first. take your yarn, form like a little loop. So this is the back of the sweater. This was the first stitch. Insert your hook, take out the stitch marker, pull it through, and chain 1. Now into that same stitch, you're going to do a single crochet, add your stitch marker. Do you hear the baby in the back with her toys? Alright, so 1 single crochet, go on to the next stitch, and so on, all the way around until you get to this part, and that's where I'll meet you again. Okay, you made it to this end, and you have 120 single crochet stitches. The next row, you're going to join this first stitch with a slip stitch. And now we chain 2. Into the next stitch, we're going to do a double crochet. So yarn over, do your double crochet, add your stitch marker, again a double crochet, and you're going to go all the way around with double crochets. I will meet you when you're over here. So you're done with the rows of double crochets, and you want to take out the stitch marker, and you want to go into the top of that chain, insert your hook, make a slip stitch, chain 1, and insert your hook into that same stitch, making a single crochet. Add your stitch marker, keep on doing single crochets all the way around, and I will meet you back over here. When you're at the end of this row, you will join again with a slip stitch, chain 1, insert your hook into that same stitch, do a single crochet, and add your marker. Now what's different about this row is, if you can see it, let me get as close as I can, every stitch has 2 loops at the top. We're only going to work on the back loop. So instead of going through both loops, we will only go through the back loop and do our single crochets in there. You're going to do that for the whole round, only into the back loop. Do you see how that creates this little ridge? I will see you over here. And you've come to this end, and now we will join again with a slip stitch into that first stitch. So chain 1 and do a single crochet into that same stitch. Now chain 11, and you're going to skip 11 stitches. That's why I always use the stitch markers, so that I know like every 10 or every 20 stitches. So this is number 10, this is 11, and then on stitch number 12 you're going to do a single crochet. Now repeat, chain 11, skip 11 again, and then on stitch number 12 do your single crochet again and repeat, chain 11 and skip 11, and on stitch number 12 we will do our single crochet again, and simply keep repeating this all the way around until you reach the end of this row. Once you're done with the row of the chains, you are going to join them again with the slip stitch. Now chain 3, and we're going to do 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches, or the next 4 chains I should say. Into the next stitch we're going to do 2 double crochets into that same stitch, and we will repeat that into the next stitch, do 2 double crochets. Now into the next 4 chains we will do double crochets. Now into the single crochet we're going to do a double crochet, and we start again doing 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches, or the next 4 chains. Now at the top again we will do 2 double crochets into that same stitch, and repeat 2 double crochets into the next stitch, and now 4 double crochets into the next 4 stitches. And that's how you're going to go all the way around by repeating these steps. And I will meet you at the end. I will meet you on the other side of these. We're done with this row, and we're going to do one more row and then we'll be done. Slip stitch into the top of the first chain that you made, chain 1, and now we're going to go into every single stitch and simply do a single crochet. It's just gonna give it more support to this neckline. And I will meet you back over on this side. We're done. Now let's cut this off. Pull it through that loop. Thread in all those loose yarns that you have. Let's make the bow. That's going to go at the bottom of the sweater. You can put it at the top too, or on the sleeves. You can make 2. You can make bigger ones, smaller ones. This is the yarn that I'm using, which is the Peyton's Grace in the color Snow. And I'll be using a 3.25 millimeter crochet hook. Start with a slip knot. Chain 30. Now we're going to join the 2 ends. Make sure your chain is straight. Insert your hook and make a slip stitch. Now chain 1. And we're going to do a single crochet into that same stitch. Add your stitch marker. Now we will go all the way around. We'll meet at the end of this row. There's your first row. Make a slip stitch, chain 1, and into that same stitch make a single crochet. Add your stitch marker. You're going to do a total of 7 rows, and I will meet you after you've done however many rounds you want to do. Now that you're done with your 7 rows, join these 2 ends with a slip stitch. Now cut off your yarn, and I like to pass it through this loop. And all you need to do is thread in these 2 ends. Now take from the other yarn that you used for the sweater, cut off a piece that's about 36 to 40 inches long. Put your needle through one of the ends, and then the back part of the bow, in the middle, put your yarn through there so that you have equal lengths of yarn on both sides, just roughly. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. Then I turn it towards you, and you are going to form a bow. So put the 2 threads to the sides. I'll take one of the ends. You have to hold on to the other end with one of your fingers, okay? So hold on to one of the ends, and then you're gonna start wrapping one side around it. It has to be pretty tight. And now the other side. That looks pretty even. Gonna turn it around, and we have to make a knot in the back, like so. So keep putting pressure on it. Now we have to do another knot. And this one's hard because you don't want the one in the bottom to get loose. Now you have 2 ends to sew it onto the sweater. Do the hair clips that go along with the sweater, then just watch my other video that I'll link to in the description below. And you're all done. Wow, what a project, huh? This took quite a while. And I hope the video wasn't too confusing. I really appreciate you getting through it, and I hope that it was easy enough to follow along. I enjoyed it, of course, like I always do with all of my projects. I have a lot of fun making them, and I hope that you had a lot of fun too. Please subscribe. I would love to see your projects. Tag me, and I will see you next time. Bye!